and welcome to the Tao of Our Understanding Recovery Podcast. In this podcast, we discuss mystical works of literature and how they relate to recovery. We hope you enjoy today's podcast episode.
Hello, this is Buddy C. Welcome to the Tao of Our Understanding Recovery Podcast. Today we have Brian and Drew. Good to have you guys. I want to remind everyone that you're more than welcome to attend this meeting that is recorded as the podcast. We post the link in our private Facebook group, the Tao of Our Understanding, TAO, with the same logo as the podcast. Or you can email me at info@buddyc.org and I will send you the link. And we record every Saturday morning at 9 a.m. Eastern. So you're more than welcome. And you don't have to talk. You can just come and listen. I don't call on anyone. And if you have nothing to share, we have people who've done that numerous times. And you're more than welcome. And if something resonates, you're welcome to share. If it doesn't, you're not called on to make any comments whatsoever. The one benefit I want to talk about today, I've had to do some letting go. I penned a book a couple of years ago that was my interpretation of the Tao Te Ching, which is what we're studying at the moment. And I put the book up for sale, published it, put the book up for sale, and I felt impressed that I needed to give it away in the PDF form. I started giving it away if someone went to the website and found I made it difficult, made it a little difficult. They had to pursue it a little. And I finally got now to where I've just surrendered it, put a link at buddyc.org up in the menu, and anyone can download it that would like to have it with minimal effort. So you don't have to email anyone. You don't have to sign up for anything. You can go to buddyc.org and download it. Up in the menu is a link. So you're more than welcome to do that. This was a gift to me, so I have to make it a gift as well and make it easy to get, an easy to get gift. Let go of more of that control. That's hard for me. So it's just what I needed, though. We will be talking today about discussing the 63rd verse of the Tao Te Ching. Before we start on the 63rd, we missed a quote last week, Drew, out of the 62nd, that we didn't take a look at the MacDonald translation, but I think, and this will actually go into our conversation today, this is the last stanza in verse 62 in the MacDonald version. By the way, we put a link in the episode notes to an online version of the Tao Te Ching that has multiple translations. So the MacDonald translation, last stanza of 62, why was the Tao esteemed by the ancient masters? Is it not said, with the Tao, we find without looking? With it, we find forgiveness for our transgressions. That is why the world cannot understand it. The phrase I liked that really spoke to me was, with it, we find without looking. And that's going to go into our conversation today, too. 63rd verse. Brian, you want to read us the Derek Lynn translation?
Sure. All right, 63rd verse. Act without action. Manage without meddling, taste without tasting, great, small, many, few. Respond to hatred with virtue. Plan difficult tasks through the simplest tasks. Achieve large tasks through the smallest tasks. The difficult tasks of the world must be handled through the simple tasks. The large tasks of the world must be handled through the small tasks. Therefore, sages never attempt great deeds all through life. Thus, they can achieve greatness. One who makes promises lightly must deserve little trust. One who sees many easy tasks must encounter much difficulty. Therefore, sages regard things as difficult, so they never encounter difficulties all through life.
Thank you, Brian. I'm going to read the Jonathan Starr. Act without acting. Give without giving. Taste without tasting. Thou alone becomes all things great and all things small. It is the one in many. It is the many in one. Let thou become all your actions. Then your wants will become your treasure. Your injury will become your blessing. Wow. Take on difficulties while they're still easy. Do great things while they're still small. Step by step, the world's burden is lifted. Piece by piece, the world's treasure is amassed. So the sage stays with his daily task and accomplishes the greatest thing. Beware of those who promise a quick and easy way, for much ease brings many difficulties. Follow your path to the end. Accept difficulty as an opportunity. This is the sure way to end up with no difficulties at all. Man, that's good. Drew, you want to read a Stephen Mitchell?
Sure. Act without doing. Work without effort. Think of the small as large and the few as many. Confront the difficult while it is still easy. Accomplish the great task by a series of small acts. The master never reaches for the great. Thus, she achieves greatness. When she runs into a difficulty, she stops and gives herself to it. She doesn't cling to her own comfort. Thus, problems are no problem for her.
Any comments at this point, guys? Let's use the Stephen Mitchell for an outline, but I want us to reference the Jonathan Starr as well. The Derek Lynn, it almost sounded Confucius sounding to me. I don't know. Sometimes he does. I guess a lot of his stuff I don't see much spirituality in sometimes, but his acting without action and manage without meddling is good. It fits in. Reading these is like the internet. You keep looking till you get something that agrees with you. Not to straighten you out. It's so that, okay, I'll look till I find something that agrees with me. Oh, yeah, it is right. Yeah.
Yeah.
I accept this is the same way. Act without doing, work without effort. What does that mean? Act without doing, work without effort. It says we still work, but it's without effort. We still act, but without doing.
I was going to say what comes up for me is you hear in recovery about taking that next right indicated step. To me, that's taking things as they come, and as they do come, just take that next right indicated step, not forcing. Wu Wei, like you talked about, to start.
Guy Fu Feng says, practice non-action, work without doing. We find, this is back to that MacDonald quote from 62, with a Tao, we find without looking. That would be acting without doing, wouldn't it?
Mm-hmm.
Drew, you have something?
Yeah, I think one way I can look at it is act without acting, do without doing, is just to do the tasks without seeing it as I'm having to put forth this effort, I'm having to do this. Just do it without resenting the fact that you have to do it. Just do the dishes and clean up the kitchen without wishing that somebody could do this for you or resenting your partner for making a little bit of a mess, or being upset about, I'd rather be doing this, I'd rather be doing that. I hate having to do this. Just one way I'm looking at it is just do the thing without resenting having to do the thing.
This is one of those that the rest of the verse is going to explain to us how to do it.
Mm-hmm.
But we're going to get that as we go along. We're going to see there's going to be example and how to implement this in our life is what the rest of the verse in my thinking is about.
Yeah, this is a very practical chapter.
Yes. Hogan says, keep still, don't work so hard. Yeah, I can see that.
And don't make things harder on yourself. Don't make yourself a martyr.
I said, forsake self-serving actions. Serve without expecting anything in return.
Mm-hmm. Give without giving line.
Yes. All right, let's move forward and we'll get, I think, a little more understanding. I like the next stanza in the Jonathan Starr. Thou alone becomes all things great and all things small. Becomes, we're changing, right? It becomes. It is the one in many. It is the many in one. Let thou become all your actions. What if we did a word substitution here and substituted thou for love or compassionate living, let's say? I'm trying to find other words for love because so many people have a skewed connotation of what love is. For a lot of folks, that's a 4-letter word. So I'm going to say compassionate living. Compassionate living alone becomes all things great and all things small. It's the one in many, it's the many in one. Let compassionate living become all your actions. Then your wants will become your treasure. Your injury will become your blessing. Wow, that's such a strong statement. Your wants become your treasure, and your injury becomes your blessing. In the Tao devotions that I'm penning, I recently talked about the gift of desperation. And that being the gift of desperation being a description of love. Doesn't sound like love, does it? But he's saying that here. Your injury will become your blessing. We all have to find our bottom, right? We find that when we come in recovery. Buddha sat under the Bodhi tree, who knows how long, till he surrendered. That was his bottom. So we look at the things that we perceive as being a harm. They're a blessing to us. How many times have you had a negative? We've talked about this multiple times. Had a negative result of something, and you thought that it was the worst thing that could happen, and it ended up being a huge blessing. I've had that happen multiple times.
It goes back to the Taoist farmer.
Yes.
Maybe it is, maybe it isn't.
You want to share that story, Brian, or you want me to?
You can share.
You're
a great storyteller.
I just want it told. It doesn't have to come from me.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah. The Taoist farmer, he had a horse that he used around the farm, and it ran away. The neighbors, which are always a problem in the story, say, "Oh, your horse ran away. How are you going to be able to do all of the farm work that needs to be done? There's no way that you can collect the harvest. You can't do anything. What are you going to do? That's a horrible thing." Maybe it isn't. I don't know. Kind of shrugged his shoulders at losing the thing that could mean starvation, feast or famine in his family. He said, I don't know if it's good or bad. A few days later, the horse returned with several wild horses that it brought back with them. Neighbors again. Oh, isn't it wonderful that you forgot how they were so critical? Oh, we could, we could use this story as the neighbors being our thoughts and our fear. Really? I never thought about that. I get in a situation and I'm either building up, my fears either tell me how great it is or how bad it is. Fear doesn't care which one, as long as I get out of the moment and pursue the fear, entertain the fears. Neighbors, fear says, oh, look, you've got all these wild horses. Now you're a rich man. Isn't that wonderful? Maybe it is. His response was the same regardless. He was in acceptance, right?
Mm-hmm.
Maybe it is. Maybe it isn't. I don't know. In that place of neutrality that we hear in recovery, pages 85, 6, right in there, I think, in the big book, we're in that place of neutrality, place of acceptance of what is. We're not being carried off by how great things are or how desolate they look. His son's out breaking the wild horses, getting ready to sell them. He gets bucked off and breaks his leg. Neighbors again. Fear again. Oh, this is horrible. What are you going to do? How are you going to get your crops in? Oh, my God. Could it be any worse for you? Maybe it isn't. Place of acceptance of what is, right? Then the army comes around and starts collecting all of the young men to go fight in a battle that they will not return from. Being his horse ran off and brought back these wild horses. Being his son was breaking the wild horses that came back. Notice none of this. The farmer was not acting. He was acting without acting, wasn't he? This was a non-action. He was finding without looking. Isn't it awful? He said, maybe. Let's see. So his son breaks his leg. The army comes around and he can't go off to war because his leg's broke. How could you put all of those actions together for that result? You couldn't.
Mm-hmm.
So the moral of the story is, how can we act without acting is exactly what we're talking about. Thank you, Brian. That's a great example. And our fears do that all the time to us. I know it does to me.
Mm-hmm.
Either feast or famine with my fears. Always is taking me to the extremes. Doesn't seem to matter which one, because both take me out of the moment. Can I find that place of neutrality? Brian?
I was just thinking, man, I have such an ego that I can get in a situation where, somebody, maybe say a customer, and they can say, we had this happen. And then I immediately say, that's going to cause a problem for me eventually. This is going to cause, it's totally unrelated. It's going to cause them to close. And then I'm going to be out. And that's like where my default is.
Your neighbors are talking, aren't they?
Yeah. And it happens like that. Yeah. 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 The neighbors are, yeah. Yeah. The neighbors are going to do this. And it's going to end up harming me somehow. And I have to say, what? Let's pump the brakes here, Brian.
Yeah. If the neighbors were our fears, they're doing the same thing, right? I'm not gonna put those neighbors in my head.
Yeah. Yeah.
All right, let's move on. Then we have the phrase, confront, think of the small as large and the few as many. In other words, just what is, right? What is what is.
Mm-hmm.
Nothing more, nothing less. Confront the difficult while it's still easy. Accomplish the great task by a series of small acts. Okay. Moment by moment, maybe. What can I do in this moment?
The first thing I think of with that, just the first thing that came to my mind is thinking I need to clean the house. That's a big act. That's insurmountable sometimes. Accomplish the great task by a series of small acts. If I think I need to clean the house, that's how long is that going to take? That's going to be a whole lot of effort, and that would often lead me to just say, I'll do that later. That's a problem for the future. But if I can look at it as, if I need to clean the house, where am I right now? I'm in the bedroom. Can I clean the bedroom? And maybe break that down. Can I just pick up the clothes that are on the floor? Can I get this pile of magazines off the bedside table? Just wherever I am, just do some small acts right there. Pick up the magazines, take them to the recycle bin, and while I'm at the recycle bin, take the trash out to the curb. And when I'm getting a new trash bag from the kitchen, just put a few things in the kitchen away, just wherever I am, do a little thing that needs to be done there. And instead of looking at it as, I've already spent an hour cleaning up and I've only done these few things, that's the do without doing. I've been doing these things, and if I can just do them without thinking about all the other stuff I have to do, or yeah, I've been doing a little, but there's still so much to do. Just do what needs to be done right around where I am, and eventually things get done and I don't feel like I've done anything.
And you don't feel overwhelmed either, right?
No.
How do you eat an elephant? One bite at a time.
Mm-hmm.
I was thinking about this too from a spiritual aspect. Let's say I want to be enlightened, which I don't know anyone that seeks spirituality that at some point doesn't have that desire. It's not that I accomplish, it's that I don't realize, because I'm beginning to see that I'm already fully everything. I just don't realize it yet. I'm not awakened to that yet. But when I approach my daily walk, it's about what I can do today. It's not about waiting on some huge event to happen in my life or think that's the way it happens. If I think that's the way it happens, I never grow spiritually. Do my devotions. I do the things that's speaking to me spiritually. If it's going to a meeting, if it's whatever service I'm involved in, doing my for me, meditation's important. And I do mine for today. And for me, that's the little bites of spirituality. It's doing those things today, not trying to wait until some big event happens, because I've found that never happens. It especially doesn't happen if I'm not seeking. Okay, let's hit this last stanza. The master never teaches. I'll read this last stanza in a few different translations, and then let's talk about it. The master never teaches. No, I'm sorry. The master never reaches for the great. Thus, she achieves greatness. When she runs into a difficulty, she stops and gives herself to it. She doesn't cling to her own comfort. Thus, problems are no problem for her. So that was Mitchell. This is Starr. So the sage stays with his daily task and accomplishes the greatest thing. Okay, that sounds good. Beware of those who promise a quick and easy way, for much ease brings many difficulties. Follow your path to the end. Accept difficulty as an opportunity. Again, looking at things, can I see this differently? This is the sure way to end up with no difficulties at all. Accept difficulty as an opportunity. I've experienced that over and over again.
Buddy, I've heard people talk about in their gratitude list is they're grateful to know that difficulties are part of a pathway to peace.
in 63, I did not do a translation. This is just an interpretation. That last stanza for me was, the sage never attempts to accomplish great things. Therefore, she is great. She knows her peace is in showing others her path to peace. Therefore, her peace is protected. Okay.
Buddy, isn't that like recovery? A sponsee, you don't have to answer. All you can do is share, this is what worked for me.
That's the effort, is sharing our experience and not taking the responsibility for that person getting sober. That would be the effort that we can't take on.
Yeah.
The way I know I've crossed that bridge is when I start getting anxious and expecting them to behave differently than they're behaving, or trying to force them to behave in a particular way. Then I'm taking responsibility for their sobriety. Now, I do make some guidelines based on my experience. We're just showing them how we did it. That's all we're doing.
Just thinking about one thing this says to me is, the master never reaches for the great, thus she achieves greatness. I know in my life I've been in mindset where I want to be a leader. I want to start a nonprofit. I want to lead a group. I want to do something like that. And that's just more of me doing it for the sake of me rather than for the sake of what a good nonprofit would be in the service of. There are plenty of nonprofits I can join and help and volunteer my time at. I don't need to start my own or start a group of my own when there are so many places out there that need somebody just to clean up in the kitchen, or sweep the floors, or put chairs back after a meeting ends or something. That's what a lot of groups and nonprofits and events and things need. Is they don't need another one competing with them. They need somebody there who can turn off the lights at the end of the night, make sure everything's locked, show up a little early, welcome people. That's how I can be most of service. A lot of times is just doing the little things. Reminds me of, I think it's a Buddhist saying about the guy who goes up to the monk and says, how do you achieve enlightenment? And monk says, carry water, chop wood. Okay, what do I do after I reach enlightenment? Carry water, chop wood. You just do the things that are in front of you. You don't, yeah, it's great to want to save the world, but you got to start with just doing the tasks that are right in front of you, helping out where you can, seeing the things that are already out there and asking how you can help rather than telling people what they need to do. So that's just one thing I get from that.
And being present while you're doing those things, Drew.
Mm-hmm.
That's the other part.
Mm-hmm.
It's being fully present, or as present as we can be. I'm still not, I doubt I'm fully present in very moments, but I'm more present than I was. That's the becoming that we talked about, I think.
What comes up for me is, first thing that popped in my head was the darn chairs that have to be set out at the meeting.
Mm-hmm.
And it's always, how many do you put out? And there's this part of me that's, I don't want to put out a few extra because those are for the people that show up late.
Or how about if you're chairing the meeting and you got the paper signers that come in late and still want their paper signed? What do you do?
Yeah.
Sign them and give it back to them and not,
Yeah.
doesn't matter.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, do y'all, in your meeting, do y'all put the chairs in a circle?
Mm-mm.
I've never been to a meeting that did that. And every time I see a meeting on TV, they're in the middle of a gym or something. What is that? I guess places they do that. I've never
Yeah.
seen it at all. Have y'all?
No.
I don't know. How about this? We need to finish up. Out of Mitchell, when she runs into a difficulty, talking about the master, she stops. Wow. When I run into a difficulty, I do the opposite.
I run.
I run harder. I push.
Yeah.
Oh, we're going to take care of this difficulty right now. And she stops. She doesn't only stop, but she gives herself to it, to the difficulty. So she surrenders to the difficulty. Is that what y'all are seeing there?
Yeah. Doesn't put it off till tomorrow. I'll stop doing this thing tomorrow, or I'll stop next week or after this event that's coming up. But what's the best day to quit? Today.
Sounds like to me she pauses and waits for her answer.
Yes, exactly. And the way Starr interpreted that was accept difficulty as an opportunity. Accept difficulty as an opportunity. She gives herself to it. That's what we learn in recovery. We surrender. We quit fighting. I'm amazed at any emotion I have come up. I don't mean you act out on anger, but if I surrender to the anger and just allow myself to be angry for a moment, it goes away. It looks like it would be the opposite, right? But it's my push against it that gives it, that it pushes back to, that gives it more strength. It's stop giving myself to the anger and sitting there for a moment, stopping. First of all, I'm still stopped. I'm not throwing stuff or cussing anybody out, or that's not what I mean in giving to the anger. I just say to myself, I'm angry right now. I'm not fighting this anger. I'm allowing myself to be angry. I am angry at because of this. Just sit there for a minute. Stop. Not take off, but just stay stopped. And within 20, 30 seconds, normally, it starts leaving. I was so amazed the first time I tried that. And it worked. Learned that from David Hawkins' Pathway to Surrender. David Hawkins, Letting Go, The Pathway of Surrender. Books in the bookstore, buddyc.org. It's yellow and white cover. Fantastic book. I'd highly recommend it. But the Audible on that is very easy listening. I would recommend that first if you're an Audible person. Giving ourselves to the difficulty. She does not cling to her own comfort. Thus, problems are no problem for her. Derek Lynn, the sage regards things as difficult, so they never encounter difficulties all through life.
Buddy, when you were talking about giving your anger just space to exist without fighting, it reminds me of, especially early in recovery, when those cravings hit, fighting those cravings or beating myself up for it. I've been sober X amount of time. Why am I still feeling this way? Why do I still have these thoughts? Judging myself for it, being hard on myself, wishing things were different, just trying to fight it. That just pours fuel on the fire. And like you were saying, when I could just realize, yeah, okay, this exists. What do I need to do now? Where's the water I need to carry? Where's the wood I need to chop? Just go about my life while acknowledging that feeling is there. Then, like you said, it ends up passing so much quicker.
Yes, thank you. That Derek Lynn last little sentence or so, the sage regards things as difficult, so they never encounter difficulties all through life. Is that kind of like the acting without doing, working without effort? If I accept what is, then it makes whatever situation I'm in easier. That's really similar, I think, to what we talked about at the end of 62 with McDonald. With a Tao, we find without looking. So in the difficulty, if we accept the difficulty, give ourselves to the difficulty, then we realize that it's not difficult at all.
And you're not resenting the difficult for not being easy. You're not feeling envy for people who have it, who don't have to go through what you're going through. You can feel even feel more empathy for people who do go through that thing, rather than focusing on yourself. And I shouldn't have to do this, shouldn't have to do that. I've got a chronic pain condition. When it flares up, if I'm in the mindset of being envious of people who don't have to go through that, or just wishing I didn't ever have to go through this, that keeps me in a much worse spot than being thankful for the times of the year when I don't go through that, and feeling sorry for not feeling sorry, but feeling empathy for the people who do go through it more than I do. Recognizing that, yeah, this pain flare up does suck, but it gets better, especially if I do the good things for it. And I'm just grateful that I don't have to go through it every day like so many people do.
Thank you, Drew. What if we looked at the difficulty as something we're seeking our peace and joy from? So if he says the sage regards all things as not providing peace and joy, they never encounter anything that would take their peace and joy. I think that's a good way of describing that.
Mm-hmm. I like that.
Because it's talking about acceptance of what is. And we find that when we're in acceptance, we can be at peace in a situation that is unacceptable, that the outcome has nothing to do with whether we have peace or not. And joy is a little different, I think. Some situations, joy is just how peace is seen outwardly, I think. So I'll just stick with peace. We can be at that place of peace, place of rest, that place of non-action, of taking the appropriate action without the self-effort to push it, without the fear, the neighbors stepping in and listening to the neighbors in my head. Yeah. So I find nothing that can take my peace and joy if I don't look at those things as providing it. How many times has a difficult thing be something that is a success story, is a difficult thing sometimes? It's not just stuff we'd perceive bad.
Mm-hmm.
Difficult is not good or bad. It's just difficult. As in something we'd want to roll our sleeves up and get in there and fix, not stop and give ourselves to it. Yeah.
Releasing that, I was going to say, releasing that expectation that things should be different.
And then, Brian, when we see things a little clearer, we can then determine what we can change and what we can't. That doesn't mean we don't filter this through the serenity prayer, accepting what we can't change, encourage to change the things we can. Yeah. But I can't see that clearly if I'm not accepting it as more of as it is. I don't know if I see anything truly as it is, very few times, but I'm closer to that. I'm becoming that, like that was the star, that the Tao becomes all things. Yeah. So it's becoming, it's that practice, right? It's all practice, every bit of it. Anything else, guys? Been a good discussion today. Hello, this is Buddy C. I wanted to make you aware of several recovery-related resources that I've posted in the episode description. These resources include a list of recovery podcasts, a free sober meditation app, daily recovery email, shared Google recovery calendars. Hope you put some of these resources to use and have a great week.
Thank you for listening to the Tao of Our Understanding Recovery Podcast. If you enjoyed this episode, please share it with your friends in recovery.